Welcome to Module 5, the final module, and Keep the Change. And this module deals with the fourth dimension in the overview of what it is to live the wisdom of navigating change wisely. And it's entitled Hold Steady and Holding Steady While Holding the Fire. Recently, Deborah Rowland has written a great book entitled Still Moving. And it's within this book that she talks about what is it that on the part of the leader is needed in the midst of a change effort. And she makes this point that one of the greatest challenges is for the leader to hold steady, for the leader to be still, to be a calm, non-anxious presence in the midst of what often is the turbulent kind of waters of a change effort. This is one of the greatest gifts that we give to those that we lead in the course of meaningful change. Edwin Friedman is an author who in recent years has talked about the choices that we have as leaders. We can power up on people and we can use our authority or our status and we can say, I'm the boss, you need to listen to me. And we can think that change is commanded and controlled by the word that we give, and we can power up. The other approach to change and to leading is to smooth over, and that is to lead by consensus and say, folks, we want to engage in change, but can we all agree here and all get along and maybe come to some kind of common denominator as to what change will accept? And this is the smooth over approach to leadership that can be used and is used in some circles. That is, we're trying to find some middle ground somewhere that all of us can agree on. Friedman himself said, I discovered when I used this model that it gave power to the weakest member and sometimes to the most vocal member and the most recalcitrant member, someone who didn't like anything about anything. The other approach is to woo in, that is to use the power of our personality and to perhaps think that charismatic leadership is the answer. So if we have a forceful personality, we can engage people in change and they'll follow because we're simply so wonderful. Friedman himself says, again, I tried this and it worked in certain circumstances, especially in crisis, when people really were scared about what was going to happen. They were looking for a charismatic leader. They were looking for someone to ride in on a white horse and save them. But there too, it had limitations. And so he develops and puts forward this idea of a holding steady approach and posture in leadership. He terms it self-differentiation. Holding steady is a different way. It is a different way of leadership. And it's simply this idea, and this goes to Deborah Rowland's work in Still Moving, called container leadership, that it's a leader or leadership group taking responsibility for their goals and their values and their vision and working to define his or her own position and self while staying in touch with the rest of the organization or body. It is the gift of leaders in a leadership group in which they're clear about what it is that the vision mission is all about, what the change effort's about, and they take clear and non-reactive stances. They're non-anxious about it. They say, this is something we have thought through and prayed through. We believe this is the direction we should go in, but we're not going to simply turn our heads and backs away from you. We want to journey with you, so we're going to keep in touch with you. We want to hear what you're experiencing, what you're learning. We want to hear your perspective. And sometimes people will say, well, I don't like the direction we're going in at all. And what you do is, in that moment, you hold steady. You simply, in a non-reactive way, define for that person your position, your goals, your values, your vision, and as well yourself. And you've heard them, you haven't disrespected them, you've heard them, and you've invited them to then consider what would there be within our vision and change that you could get around, your head around, your heart around. Is there anything? Can you get your head around that, your heart around that, and join us? And that allows a person to know that you're not going to be like a sail that is caught by every wind and by every thought and idea that people have that you should go this way or that way. This is what often happens in leadership. It's a wonderful thing when you have leaders who say to a group of people, folks, we're going to move. We're going to move meaningfully in this change. And you give them the gift of stillness and calmness at the level of leadership. This is what it means to hold steady while holding the fire, because leadership is challenging. This picture is a picture that was painted in the late 1800s by an artist by the name of Ensor. And he painted a portrait of Christ in Brussels at festival time. The title is Christ in Brussels. And it is the festival. It is the people celebrating, and they are in party mode. And Ensor paints Christ in the midst of them. You can see right in the middle of the picture, there's a halo. There's a yellow kind of haze around someone dressed in a red robe. And Ensor painted this, made this painting because some art historians believe he was trying to make a statement about his own leadership and leading change in the art world through impressionistic art. And he felt like he was Christ in Brussels at festival time, and people are going about their merry business and they are paying no attention to him. And Ensor is trying to get at the fact that sometimes you can be like the Messiah and people ignore you. Now, I put this picture in this presentation because it is actually the cover picture of the book by James O'Toole on leading change. He actually, in his book on leading change, has the very artwork of Ensor. It's clearer than this particular PowerPoint picture, but he deals with the ideology of comfort and the tyranny of custom in leading change. And he makes this point that leading change is at times incredibly difficult. And sometimes the crowd that's around you could care less about what you have to say. It's a fascinating book because he deals with reformers such as Deming, who led the Industrial Revolution and greatly influenced Japan and its Industrial Revolution. Peter Drucker, others who people ignored them in the early days of their careers because they were ahead of their times. Times were not ripe. There was no urgency for what it was they were saying. But they led nonetheless, and eventually there was change, but they had to hold steady. All these change leaders had to hold steady. So what then does it mean to hold steady in the turbulence of change? In the notes that we provided for you, we provided just a number of encouragements that we believe are important for your own holding steady in leading in sometimes uncharted territory. The first thing to keep in mind is this: stay alert. This matter of being attentive and being fully awake as a leader is vitally important when we're leading change. It's vitally important in our normal day-to-day leadership lives. Paying attention is the currency of leadership, but stay alert, be prayerful in your sense making. Learn to pray that unbinding prayer. Lord, help me to have eyes that are more keen than the eyes of my flesh, and to see more than I see simply with my physical eyes. Take time with your issues and your problems and your challenges with your team. Do not rush into things. Take time with them. And get on the balcony often. Get above the action. Get above the fray. And this is something you do through the change effort, is that you're certainly on the ground, you're in the trees, working through the details of change, but you need to get above it and get on the balcony. The second thing that is vitally important is not only to stay alert in change, but also to realize you must stay calm. This is easy to say. It's often difficult to live out. But one of the gifts we give to our people is this matter of a non-anxious presence. And it really comes down to the spine of identity that we develop over a life course and over our lifetime. That more and more, hopefully, we're learning to develop a spine of identity where we know who we are and we know whose we are. We know that our identity is rooted in Christ and his love for us, and we are his beloved. And in us, he is well pleased. And he invites us as his beloved to journey with him. And sometimes the waters get incredibly turbulent. And this is the image of the artist of Jesus on the storm with the disciples, and they're panicked, but he is at rest. And he gives to them, I think, in this a model of keep your eyes on me. When you're in the storm, you can see the storm for all it's worth, but you need to keep your eyes on me. And the great gift of a non-anxious presence is what we give to those that we leave. It's often been said the calmness of the leader is what dictates the calmness of a team. And so I would encourage you to be at work in this spine of identity, because when the spine of identity is well established, you can risk relating to others. You can risk relating to others and in a depth of those who are very different from you. But when that spine of identity is weak, everything is a threat. So we need to work on this matter of staying calm in the midst of leadership. We also need to stay connected. Staying connected is simply acknowledging that you need to engage with others around you in the learning process. You need to think and act politically and relationally. You need to be aware that there are people with you. There are also people who are going to be opposed to you. It doesn't mean they're enemies in any way. You need to keep them closer and get to know them and listen to them. You also need to listen to everyone around you. Stay in touch with the system. There's a marvelous statement by Lou Platt many years ago. If HP knew what HP knows, it would be 3 times as effective, productive, and profitable. Part of your connection with people around you is to listen to them and to learn from them. What do you know? And staying connected is vitally important, because we rope ourselves together in times when the skies are blue, because we all know that the weather pattern can change and it can go to ground very quickly. And so we need to have that lifeline with others in the midst of the fray of change. We then need to also stay the course. We need to realize that we need to move out and look for those small wins. We need to face the pain and loss that may be inherent. We need to let go of what we know and cross sometimes some bridges that are quite harrowing. We need to cross some chasms that are often fear-producing. But as we do that, we regulate the distress for people. We encourage them. We stay in touch with them. We empathize with them in their anxiety. We encourage them along. We support them. And then we pray that unbinding prayer with them. And we pray that prayer for them. Lord, help them to see what the eyes of flesh do not see. So to hold steady in the midst of change is to start with conviction, to be clear about what you're about, what your team's about, your values, your position, your vision. Then stay calm in the midst of that, stay connected in a vital way, and stay the course. And then there's this. You are acting as a container, as a person providing container leadership. And what is that? It is acting as a non-anxious container for the sake of others. You're holding them, you're guiding them through what often can be painful transition. While not taking on their angst or their emotion. This is one of the most important roles that we can take on for another human being or a human system. And it demands of us to be present, to be compassionate. It brings out our dignity. It can also bring out the depths in us as we learn to confront our own insecurity and our own darkest fears. It is a transforming and generous act. So here's some general kind of principles that we'd encourage you to have close at hand. Be honest, be humble, be prayerful, be clear, be courageous, be patient, be persistent, and be connected yourself. In the midst of holding others, you need to also be held. Here's a kind of rule of thumb. We said in the summary, here's what we do to lead well, but then there's this. We will hold others as we are held. So we've talked about providing a holding environment for people that we lead in change. We're supporting them, encouraging them. You also need to realize you need to be held as well. We will hold others as we are held. In the final page of the notes, we've given you this sense and encouragement. There is no change process without the work of holding steady while holding the fire. This is done through the work of crafting a good holding enough environment that neither intrudes upon people or abandons them. What we're doing when we're holding others is we're holding them, we're letting them go, we're challenging them, we're also standing by for people. But you also need to be held while you are holding the fire. This is done through the work of finding for oneself a good enough holding environment that neither intrudes nor abandons you while holding a change process or a season of change in your organization. When I have a holding environment, it is far more likely that I can become this non-anxious presence in my own leadership posture. That is, I'll be able to hold steady in the churn and burn of a change process when I myself am held by others, by a band of brothers, band of sisters. So at Crest, we are dedicated to this process of helping you in this way, of figuring out how your self in the midst can be most healthy and flourishing. Every leader in the midst needs a secure base or holding environment that holds them while they hold others. And that is why we designed the diploma with a cohort sense in the middle. This is why the MCL is done in community. Because what are we doing as leaders? We're working with current reality and leading people to a preferred future. We're taking action with them. It takes courage. It takes change. We're in the midst of this, and we need to be held well. And that is why we're in the process right now of developing something at Crest that we're going to call, most likely, the Base Camp Essential. And that is that we all need a base camp from which we know we've got others who are caring for us, supporting us, as well as challenging us to be our best in the world. And that's going to come in the future. But for now, we want to encourage you in your own change journey and in your team. Perhaps you need to take time to just talk about this matter of what you're doing right now to stay alert, stay calm, to also in the midst of your leadership, to do good work of staying connected. Are you connected in some way outside of your context that supports you and are people who love you and care for you, let you go, stand by for you, and help you to do your best work in the world? For now, we want to encourage you, continue on, keep the change. That's our hope for you. But you can't keep the change unless you work well some of these essential ingredients that we've shared with you. We believe this with all of our hearts. So we trust we'll see you along the way. Thank you for your support, your encouragement of one another. And we encourage you to carry on in your stewardship in the world and to do your best work together to serve the one who has called us to serve others and bring about transformation. It's hard work, and we can do it and steward well what God's given us so as to keep the change and the change effort that we're about. We'll see you along the way. Thank you for taking in this deep dive.